Hello, coaches. Welcome to the screencast on motor learning stages and application that I've put together for you. This screencast will cover the stages of motor learning theory, covers an analogy I created about snow rollers that hopefully will help you understand the stages of motor learning. And then we'll also get into practical application. So once you know something about the stages of motor learning, how does that practically impact your coaching? So let's start out with the stages of motor learning, or the theory behind it. So the model we'll move forward with this screencast was created by Fitz and Posner in 1967, and this screencast does diverge from their original model, but the core of it is certainly from them. And the general model looks at there's three stages: the cognitive, associative, and autonomous stages of motor learning. And it's a continuous cycle that is also omnidirectional. So you could go from the associative stage to the autonomous, or you could also go associative back to cognitive. So I know I have unidirectional arrows down here, but picture them as being bidirectional. One piece before we move on is I want to make sure we're all clear on the definition of learning. So learning for motor learning is a relatively permanent change in how we move. So you'll hear me use the term sticky learning or sticky skills. And sticky skills are skills that we've truly learned, that there's going to be a relatively permanent change in how we do them. So let's dive right in. We're going to start with the cognitive stage of motor learning here. So the cognitive stage of motor learning, how do you know if you see an athlete in that stage? Well, number one, key aspects of form that you're looking for will not be present, and the athlete's movements are going to be ineffective and likely inefficient as well. Now, the athletes need time to stay in the cognitive stage and truly explore movement solutions for the skills that they're trying to develop. The more that they listen to a coach, that's time away from the task of actually exploring motor skills and different solutions to get good at those skills. So what can a coach do in the cognitive for an athlete that's in the cognitive stage? Provide clear visuals. They can simplify tasks, so you can chunk a skill into smaller pieces. You could use block style session design. You could also reduce resistance by using the 3B pathway. So if you were teaching somebody setup, or even somebody that was already decent at setup, but you wanted to build that skill more, you may not be able to do that with their competition weight bow. So going back down to the body or a lightweight training band, stretch band, and then moving up to a lightweight bow and progressing back to their competition bow might be the way to do it, probably the way to do it. In the cognitive stage, a coach also wants to help athletes find positive transfers. So are there other sports that the athlete has done or other experiences they've had in their life where those skills or experiences from something else outside of archery will transfer in positive ways to the skill that you're trying to get them to explore in archery? And then finally, we want to use reflection, and that's something you'll see ubiquitous throughout all of these stages. Okay, so let's next go to the associative stage. Associative stage, key aspects of form begin to emerge here, and you're going to see the athlete needs to spend less time thinking. It becomes a little bit easier for them as skills begin to flow together. For athletes in the associative phase, coaches can increase resistance level if the form sticks. So if the coach sees the form decay significantly as resistance level goes up, or as you progress down the 3B pathway, it's best to back off on that resistance because it's adding too much of a challenge. We want to have athletes explore rhythm and timing during the associative phase, and also guide athletes towards weaving chunks together chunks that they've had success with, this is where they begin weaving them together. Repeated block and serial design, so designs that begin to challenge the athlete more with more intermittent task switching between focal points. That is one aspect of session design that can be used to um, help athletes in the associative stage of motor learning. More pull style coaching will be used here for sure. Encouragement and again, reflection, key for all of these different stages. From the associative stage, if an athlete continues to develop, I guess towards the goals that we're looking for, is the autonomous stage of motor learning. And with the autonomous stage, this is where you see consistent key aspects of form for the level of the athlete that you're looking at. You see efficient physical movements for the level that we're talking about, and kind of an optimal balance of conscious subconscious, again, for the level that of the athlete that you're looking at. So the reason why I'm putting such a stress on for the level is because you could have a let's say a young child, and they are out in the backyard with a baseball bat and they are just whacking flowers off of a bush, and they are not in the cognitive stage of motor learning probably for that. They are just doing that autonomously. Is their form what we would want to see in a little league for like little league performance or something even beyond that? No, it's not. But they are in the autonomous stage for the level that we would expect to see for that age and skill level. So what can a coach do for an athlete that's in the autonomous stage? Number one, use more serial and random design, use more pull style coaching, and reinforce skills with representational design. Representational design are when the coach creates environments that mimic tournament-like situations, the context and feeling of a tournament. And again, use reflection. Okay, so now let's dive into snow rollers. If you know what a snow roller is, fantastic. If not, don't worry about it. Snow rollers take place, these are natural phenomena you might see in Idaho, Montana, where the wind gets whipping and it's going to pick up the snow in a certain way that it begins to roll, a lot like you see here. So let's take a look and see how I see this relating to the stages of motor learning. So here's one giant snow roller, and just look at all those different layers that we have here. Some key points here, that this snow roller could roll to the left or to the right. And that is important because to really understand motor learning stages, you need to understand that the athlete can go either direction. They could be in the cognitive stage. Let's say you're working on anchor, and all of a sudden they could roll towards the autonomous stage with that skill. And that actually might not be desirable. So let's say you're working on anchor in the cognitive stage, and they begin to show autonomous skill with anchor. That probably means that they have reverted back to their old skill that they were autonomous with before. So we want to see people go from the cognitive stage through the associative stage. They might bounce back to the cognitive stage for a bit, but through our coaching and through guidance, they will work their way from cognitive to associative to autonomous. And every revolution that an athlete makes around this circle, every revolution that a snow roller makes, one layer is added to the big picture. And if you observe these 8 layers, beginners have explored the stages fewer times than an elite athlete, and elites have more rotations around this cycle. All right, so another important piece is that in the autonomous stage is not synonymous with elite. Anyone can be at the autonomous stage or at any stage at any point. Now, take your eye to the background on the left-hand side. Notice how the smaller snow rolls in the background those could be the same person, as this big snow roll represents, or also could represent different people. So maybe we are looking at a very experienced athlete here in the front, and we have less experienced athletes in the back. Or we could be looking at someone's, this represents how well someone does loading, for instance. They have gone through the cognitive stage 8 times, and they've really developed their they've really developed the skill of loading. But maybe there's these other skills back there where they're still relatively new at. Okay, hopefully that helps out. Let's move on from snow rollers to talking about practical application. So what do you do with this? Well, let's talk about session design. In the cognitive stage, we can build skills with block and repeated block. So you're doing very little task transitions between your focal points. So maybe I'm going to work on my loading cue for 24 shots and then work on my anchor cue for 24 shots. That'd be block. Repeated block, I work on my loading cue for maybe 6 shots and then my anchor cue for 6 shots. So just reducing the amount of time between transitions. We can use the 3B pathway, and we can definitely always want to use reflection. For associative stage, we are looking to refine skills. So repeated block and serial. So serial, you're using, you would do maybe your load cue for 1 arrow, anchor cue for another arrow, transfer cue for a 3rd arrow example. And you would work from a lightweight bow to heavier. At any point that you begin to see decay in form, then you want to drop down on that draw weight, go back down a 3B pathway. And finally, for the autonomous stage, you want to be reinforcing skills using serial session designs, random session designs, and also representational learning designs, RLDs. So that's, again, where the context or the environments that you create really represent tournament-like conditions. Okay. For pedagogy, it really depends. What we know is that coaching methods that support athletes exploring their, what we call the perception action workspace. This is where an athlete is actually getting their hands dirty, moving around and trying things out. That's their perception action workspace. When the athlete is moving and exploring, that's when we see an enhanced rate of skill acquisition compared to coaching methods that require athletes to listen to the coach explain the what and the why and the how to do something. So I've put a link right here that I highly recommend you check out. Mostyn and Ashworth wrote a book some years ago that offered wonderful insight into 11 different methods for coaching. And the PE project link I give you here has broken it down to a very simple way. So I recommend you check that out. Finally, we can adapt feedback based on what we know of the stages of motor, someone's stage of motor learning. And how would we do that? Well, it depends. It depends on the training age of the athlete. Generally, pull style works best for cognitive, associative, autonomous, and generally a mix of push and pull is good for cognitive beginners. However, remember, we could have elite athletes in the cognitive stage as well, and that I would use pull all the way for those athletes. So what we know is that pull styles engage the learner and make the key points sticky, right? We're going to see the actual learning take place. Their performance might not go up on that day, but their actual learning will. And we want to see reflection always used. Great. So for reflection, here are some reflection questions for you. Pause the video here and see how well you do answering these questions. If you have any trouble answering them, go ahead and scrub back through the video and see what you discover. Thanks for watching. Take care.